You ever wake up in the morning and feel like the world is already 3 steps ahead of you, like life's moving fast and you're just trying to catch your breath? Maybe you've got big dreams, but somewhere along the way, doubt crept in. That voice in your head started whispering, "What if you're not enough? What if you fail?" Let me tell you something, that voice is a liar. And you've got a choice. You can let it keep running the show, or you can rise up and say, "I can do it." See, that phrase, "I can do it," it's not about ego. It's not about pretending everything's easy. It's about making a decision to believe in yourself even when nobody else claps. A decision to show up, not because you're fearless, but because you refuse to let fear be the author of your story. This isn't about being perfect. This is about being present, being real, and being willing to try again even with shaky hands. That's where power lives. Not in the absence of struggle, but in the courage to stand tall in the middle of it and say, "I'm still here and I can do it." Self-acceptance is the foundation of all personal growth and success. It's not just about saying, "I'm okay" on the surface. It's about truly embracing every part of yourself, even the parts you've been taught to hide or hate. Many people confuse self-acceptance with complacency, thinking that if you accept yourself, it means you're settling or giving up on growth. But that's not the truth. Accepting yourself doesn't mean you're done improving. It means you're finally starting from an honest place. You're no longer running from who you are. You're standing in front of the mirror and saying, "This is me, and I'm not going to deny it anymore." When someone doesn't accept themselves, every step forward feels like dragging a weight. Every achievement becomes a band-aid, and every failure feels like confirmation of inadequacy. That's because when you haven't made peace with who you are, you're constantly trying to escape. You're hustling to prove something. You're afraid people will see the parts you haven't accepted. And worse, you're afraid you'll see them too. But when you choose to accept yourself, the struggle shifts. You stop trying to be someone else. You stop living according to everyone else's expectations. You drop the mask and start working with your real face. You stop asking for permission to be yourself, and instead you grant it. Imagine a person trying to climb a mountain while rejecting their own legs. They look down at the very thing that's carrying them up and say, "You're not good enough." How far do you think they'll go? That's what we do to ourselves when we refuse to accept who we are. We try to build a life on top of self-rejection. We try to chase goals while tearing down the very person who's meant to reach them. Self-acceptance is looking down at those legs, metaphorical or not, and saying, "You might have scars, you might be tired, but I trust you, we're going to make it." That shift in mindset doesn't just help you move, it changes the way you move. You begin to understand that your flaws are not enemies. They are a part of your story, not the end of it. You see that your past isn't something to erase, it's something to learn from. Self-acceptance lets you claim ownership of your journey. It allows you to take back your narrative. You don't wait for the world to validate you because you've already decided that you matter. And when that decision comes from deep inside, not from applause, not from likes, not from comparisons, it brings a kind of calm that no one can shake. That calm is what people call inner peace. What's powerful is that this peace doesn't make you soft, it makes you steady. It's not passiveness, it's clarity. You don't have to chase every opinion or crumble under criticism because you're no longer trying to become someone else. You're building on truth. You're growing from a grounded place. Self-acceptance gives you that anchor, and from there, everything becomes possible. The pain, the pressure, the problems, they don't disappear, but you stop letting them define you. You stop fighting yourself and start fighting for yourself. So when you say, "I can do it," it's not because you've convinced yourself that you're flawless. It's because you've accepted that you're human and still, you're capable. That belief, that inner peace, that courage, It all begins with self-acceptance. Inner peace isn't something you find out in the world. It's not hidden in a bank account, in a fancy title, in a corner office, or in the compliments of strangers. Those things might feel good for a while, but they don't last. You can have all the success in the world and still feel empty when the lights go out and the noise fades. That's because peace doesn't come from the outside in. It comes from the inside out. And until you understand that, you'll always be chasing something that was never meant to satisfy you. People often look at others who seem calm, grounded, or joyful and think they must have it all together. But the truth is, those who carry peace often found it not through comfort, but through chaos. They learned that no amount of external validation could make up for what they didn't believe about themselves. They realized that you could be surrounded by praise and still feel unworthy. You could be loved by many and still not love yourself. That kind of conflict eats away at you silently, even if everything looks fine on the outside. So they stopped searching out there and started searching within. The world teaches us to seek approval, to tie our worth to achievement, looks, relationships, or popularity. We're taught that if we just get there, we'll feel better. But the finish line keeps moving. You graduate, and then you're told to get a job. You get the job, now it's time for the promotion. You get the promotion, now you need more money. It never ends. And every time you reach for more, hoping it'll quiet the noise inside, you end up more exhausted and less satisfied. That's because the peace you want doesn't live in things, it lives in truth. Your truth. That truth starts when you stop pretending, when you stop performing, when you stop trying to shape yourself into someone else's idea of who you should be. That's where the stillness begins. When you're no longer running from your own shadow, you start walking in the light. It's not about never being sad or never feeling stress. Inner peace doesn't mean your life is perfect. It means you've stopped believing that perfection is required for you to feel whole. You realize that even with your flaws, your fears, and your past, you are still enough. And when that settles into your bones, everything changes. Suddenly, silence doesn't scare you. You don't need constant distraction because you're not afraid of your own mind anymore. You're not desperate for attention because you've given yourself attention. You've met yourself in your most vulnerable places and didn't walk away. You stayed, you listened, you made peace with who you are. That kind of inner agreement doesn't shake when life gets loud. It doesn't collapse when someone criticizes you, because your sense of self isn't hanging by a thread. It's rooted in something deeper. You begin to see the world differently too. You stop comparing yourself so much because you know your path is yours. You celebrate others without feeling like you're losing. You stop measuring your value by likes, followers, awards, or opinions. You're not moved by every little wave because your anchor is set. And that anchor wasn't handed to you by the world. You placed it yourself, inside your own heart. Peace like that isn't found, it's made. It's built through honesty, through healing, through sitting with your discomfort until it no longer controls you. It's not always loud, not always showy. Sometimes it's just the quiet confidence of waking up and knowing you're good. Not because the world said so, but because you did. I can do it is not just a phrase you say to sound confident. It's not a motivational quote you slap on your wall or hashtag you throw under a picture. It's a choice, a powerful, intentional decision to believe in your ability to rise, even when everything around you tries to convince you otherwise. Most people wait until they feel ready to say it, like they need to be stronger, smarter, more prepared, more perfect. But waiting for perfect conditions is just another form of fear. The truth is, you don't say I can do it because everything is in place. You say it because you've decided that who you are right now is enough to start. It begins the moment you stop measuring yourself against some impossible standard. There will always be someone more experienced, more talented, more connected, but comparison kills momentum. It makes you forget the value of your own voice, your own journey. Saying I can do it isn't about proving you're better than anyone else. It's about recognizing that your story matters too. It's about showing up for yourself without apology or excuse. When you choose to say it, you're not denying your fears, you're refusing to be ruled by them. Many people think courage feels like confidence, but often it feels more like shaking hands, dry mouth, and a racing heart. It feels like doing something before you're ready. Saying, "I can do it," doesn't erase the nerves. It just puts you in the driver's seat, gives you permission to try, to fail, and to learn. And that's the part people overlook. I can do it doesn't mean you'll get it perfect the first time. It means you believe the effort is worth it, even if the outcome is uncertain. That kind of belief doesn't come from ego, it comes from knowing your value isn't tied to results. This choice becomes especially powerful when it's rooted in self-acceptance, because once you've accepted who you are, your flaws, your wounds, your strengths, you stop waiting for outside validation to move. You don't need someone to tell you you're capable. You don't need a green light from the world. You give yourself the go-ahead. You create the opening. You stop asking, "Am I allowed to?" and start saying, "I'm doing it anyway." That's when the phrase shifts from something you whisper to something you live. The world is full of voices trying to convince you otherwise. Voices that say, "You can't. You're not ready. You're too old. You're too young. You're too broken." But those voices lose their power the moment you stop agreeing with them. Saying, "I can do it," is a rebellion against the noise. It's you choosing to believe that your future isn't dictated by your past, that you're not the mistakes you've made or the chances you missed, that every single day you wake up you have the right to try again. It's also not a one-time decision. You don't say it once and suddenly life gets easier. You say it over and over, especially on the days you feel like quitting. You say it when you're tired. You say it when the plan falls apart. You say it when no one's clapping, because it's not about feeling invincible. It's about being unwilling to quit on yourself. Every time you choose to believe, even just a little, you build something stronger inside you, something steady, something real. And that steady belief, that's what carries you forward, one step at a time. Failure is one of the most misunderstood experiences in life. Most people are taught, directly or indirectly, that failure is something to avoid, something that says, "You're not good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough." But failure isn't a verdict on your worth. It's simply feedback. It's part of the process of becoming. Yet the reason so many people fear it deeply is because they haven't accepted themselves fully. When your self-worth is hanging by the thread of achievement, any failure feels like a personal collapse. You didn't just mess up, you are the mess up. That's how it feels when you haven't made peace with yourself. When someone hasn't accepted who they are, they attach their value to every outcome. A rejection isn't just a setback, it's confirmation of every doubt they've ever had. A mistake isn't just a lesson, it becomes shame they carry long after the moment has passed. That's the real weight of failure, not the loss, but the meaning we assign to it. And the meaning we assign often comes from how we see ourselves. If you believe deep down that you're not enough, every stumble feels like proof. But when you accept yourself, when you've made the choice to value who you are beyond what you do, failure doesn't hit the same. It still hurts, but it doesn't define you. It becomes something you faced, not something you became. Self-acceptance acts like a buffer. It doesn't prevent failure, but it changes your relationship with it. Instead of running from it, you can look it in the eye. Instead of feeling like it's the end, you start to understand it's a part of the path. When you've made peace with your imperfections, you don't crumble every time something doesn't go your way. You regroup, you reflect, and you return stronger. Because you're not trying to protect a fragile ego, You're building something deeper. You're growing with intention. Failure also becomes less personal. You stop thinking, what's wrong with me, and start asking, what can I learn from this? That's a major shift. One is rooted in shame. The other is rooted in growth. And that growth only becomes possible when you're not using failure as a measuring stick for your value. You're not waiting to feel worthy based on outcomes anymore. You've already claimed that worth internally. So when failure comes, and it will, you treat it as an event, not an identity. That mindset changes everything. What many people don't realize is that avoiding failure doesn't protect you, it limits you. If your goal is to never fall, you'll never fly either. You'll stay where it's safe, where it's small, where you don't risk embarrassment, but you also don't touch real growth. When you accept yourself, you become more willing to take the risk. Not because you're fearless, but because you've made peace with the possibility of failing. You trust that even if things don't go how you hoped, you'll still be okay. You'll still be you. It's that foundation of self-acceptance that gives you the freedom to try, to stretch, to step outside your comfort zone. Failure stops being something you fear and becomes something you're willing to face, not because you enjoy it, but because you know it's part of the deal. And more importantly, you know it doesn't touch your core. It doesn't get to rewrite who you are, because who you are has already been decided, not by the world, but by you. Discipline and faith are two forces that shape every meaningful journey, but they don't come from thin air. They grow from something deeper, from belief. Not belief in an outcome, not belief in someone else's plan, but belief in yourself. When you truly accept who you are, you begin to understand that you're worth showing up for. You stop waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect version of yourself to appear. You commit to the process because you trust that even in your imperfection, even in your uncertainty, you still have something to offer. That trust becomes the soil where discipline and faith take root. Discipline isn't about punishment. It's about consistency. It's about doing the work even when the feelings aren't there. And the reason most people struggle with it is because they're fighting against themselves. When you're constantly doubting your worth, every task feels heavier, every obstacle feels personal. You procrastinate, not because you're lazy, but because deep down, you're questioning whether it's even worth the effort. If you don't believe in yourself, how can you believe the work will lead anywhere? But when you accept yourself, flaws and all, you remove that layer of resistance. You no longer see effort as proof of your inadequacy. You see it as a reflection of your value. You show up not because you have to prove you're good enough, but because you've already decided that you are. This is where faith steps in. Faith isn't blind optimism or ignoring reality. It's the quiet conviction that what you're doing matters, even when you can't yet see the results. It's trusting the path when it's foggy. It's believing in the worth of each step, even when the finish line feels out of reach. And that kind of faith is nearly impossible without self-acceptance. Because without it, doubt creeps in at every turn. You start asking, who am I to think I can do this? But when you've embraced who you are, the mistakes, the growth, the humanity, you don't have to ask that question anymore. You know who you are. You've stopped fighting for permission to begin. The relationship between discipline and faith becomes a loop. Discipline feeds faith, and faith fuels discipline. Every time you show up, whether it's to work, to train, to heal, or to create, you prove to yourself that you can be trusted, and that builds confidence, that builds peace. You're no longer dependent on motivation or emotion because what's driving you is internal alignment. You're not running from fear, you're walking with purpose. And every small action becomes a statement. I believe in what I'm building. I believe in myself. People think discipline is just about structure. Wake up early, follow the plan, check the boxes, but real discipline is emotional. It's about the stories you tell yourself every day. If those stories are filled with self-criticism and shame, no routine will stick. But if those stories are grounded in compassion and honesty, you build routines that reflect care, not punishment. That's how long-term growth happens. That's how you keep going even when no one's watching. When you've accepted yourself, you stop seeing discipline as a grind and start seeing it as a gift, a way to honor your potential, a way to respect the life you've been given. Faith, then, becomes the energy that sustains you. Not a desperate hope for results, but a calm certainty that you're moving in the right direction. Because you're no longer working to prove your value, you're working because you've already claimed it. That belief doesn't shout, it doesn't need to, it simply shows up. Every day, every step, every time. When you fully accept yourself, the way you view success starts to shift. It's no longer just about titles, money, or external validation. It becomes something deeper, something more personal. You begin to understand that success isn't defined by how loud the applause is or how high the numbers climb, but by how aligned you are with your truth. That kind of success isn't measured in trophies. It's measured in peace, in growth, in how fully you're able to live without betraying who you are. When you're not chasing someone else's definition of success, you stop living for the scoreboard and start living from the soul. Too often, people run toward achievements hoping they'll finally feel whole. They think, if I get that job, that car, that recognition, then I'll feel enough. But when they reach those milestones, there's a hollowness that creeps in. The moment passes, the applause fades, and they're left with the same questions. Why don't I feel different? Why doesn't this fix what I thought it would? That's what happens when success isn't rooted in self-acceptance. You end up building a life that looks good from the outside but feels empty inside. But when you accept yourself, your goals become clearer, more honest. You don't pursue things to fill a void, you pursue them to express what's already full. You're not chasing worth, you're living from it. You define success by how closely your outer world matches your inner truth. Maybe that looks like a career you're proud of. Maybe it looks like healing relationships. Or maybe it's simply waking up and knowing you're living with integrity. Whatever it is, it comes from you, not from anyone else's checklist. Self-acceptance also allows you to celebrate your wins without guilt or imposter syndrome. You're no longer waiting for someone to validate your place at the table. You know you belong there because you've done the inner work. You know what it costs to show up as yourself, and that makes every victory more meaningful. There's a quiet strength in that kind of success. It doesn't scream for attention, but it doesn't shrink away either. It stands steady, it's earned not just through effort, but through honesty. Even your failures feel different when you've accepted yourself. You don't see them as evidence that you're not enough, you see them as part of a bigger picture. Proof that you had the courage to try, to risk, to stretch. Success in that light becomes about showing up fully. It's not perfection, it's presence. It's being all in regardless of the outcome. That's something you can carry every day, not just on the mountaintop, but in the climb, in the quiet moments, in the effort itself. You also begin to measure success by how you treat people, how you handle pressure, how you respond when things don't go your way. That emotional maturity becomes its own reward. You're not just chasing success, you're becoming someone who can hold it with grace. Because success without self-acceptance often leads to self-sabotage. But success built on a foundation of truth becomes sustainable. You don't lose yourself trying to maintain it. You grow deeper into who you are. The deeper your self-acceptance runs, the more free you are to define success on your own terms. And that freedom is powerful. You're no longer stuck in comparison or caught in someone else's pace. You move with intention. You move with clarity. And every step you take whether it's forward or back, is still part of your progress, not because of how it looks, but because of how real it is. That's the kind of success that lasts. Not the kind that fades with trends or applause, but the kind that lives inside you, rooted in who you've chosen to become. So when it's all said and done, when the crowd goes quiet, when the lights dim, and it's just you standing there with your choices, your dreams, and your truth, remember this. You never had to have it all figured out to start moving. Everything you've been looking for outside, that strength, that peace, that confidence, it's been in you the whole time, waiting for you to believe it, to claim it. Saying I can do it isn't just about reaching the top. It's about having the heart to begin, the courage to fail, the discipline to keep going, and the faith to rise again. It's about accepting who you are so fully that the world's noise can't drown out your voice. And once you find that kind of peace, that kind of fire, nobody can take it from you. You don't need permission. You don't need a perfect past. All you need is a decision to believe, to stand in front of your reflection and say, no matter what comes, no matter how many times I fall, I can do it. And you will, because now you know who you are.